Parry is the co-founder and CEO of Global Services in Education, GSE, and is well regarded as a global expert in international education. GSE sets up and manages international schools across the Asia Pacific and Middle East regions with expertise in international baccalaureate UK, Australian and US curricula. In Malaysia, his team is responsible for setting up and managing the new Kingsgate International School in Bukit Jalil. Without further ado, let's give Mr. Greg Parry a warm welcome as he informs us on what parents should know about schools and current education trends.
Thank you very much. So my goal today is to get through this whole presentation without losing my voice. It probably doesn't surprise you that there's been lots of conversations today. And for those of you that anyone that knows me knows that when I start talking about education, two things happen. I don't stop talking about education and I speak really, really quickly. So if you notice that my wife Shanna waving to me throughout the presentation, it's because she doesn't understand me anymore because I'm speaking so quickly. It's funny, I've been in Malaysia. We've actually set up our home base now in Malaysia. I'll explain more about our background in a minute, but just one of the things I found funny, I call myself a native English speaker because of course I come from Australia. But one of the things that Shannon and I often joke about the fact that she has an accent and I don't, or the fact that we spell things differently. So one of the things I've had challenges with in the first couple of weeks is that I'm using Grab Taxi or Uber and I've had deliveries to our house and they'll call me up and they'll say, "Hello sir, we're here to pick you up." They'll say, "What building are you?" And I say, "I'm in building A." And they'll say, "Yeah, but sir, you're in building I?" I said, "No, I'm in building A." "Oh, you're in building I?" "No, I'm in building A." And last week, to be honest, Shannon was with me. I literally handed the phone to her and I said, "Can you please translate because nobody can understand my accent." So again, I apologise in advance if my Australian accent and speak is out of control in the next few minutes. As we said in the introduction, my key role here in Malaysia right now is to set up the brand new Kingsgate International School. My plan is not to talk about Kingsgate in this presentation. My role today though is to talk about education management from the side of someone who has set up and managed international schools. So let me give you a little bit of a background about us. So Shannon and I began as teachers. We then moved on to become principals. Me in Australia, Shannon in the US. We were successful as principals in our own country, but then we decided we wanted a different change. And Shannon was the director of a university in the US as well. And then we moved to Dubai, which is where we first met. And we were head of an American international baccalaureate school. And that's when we first got our taste of, first of all, international education, but also working in a for-profit education environment, which for both of us was very unusual because we both previously worked in non-profit education environments. Now, one of the things about educators you'll learn to realise is that we are purists. We have this angelic idea that the world works in a particular way and nobody can change the world for us. We believe that education is this pure place where, you know, play the violins, children are going to graduate and become, you know, future leaders of the world, and that's true. But it often conflicts with this idea of for-profit education because people see it as almost dirty, almost unsavoury to make profit from children's educational process. So in the early days of working in these spaces, we too had problems with it. We believed in education. We've been successful principals. We wanted children to achieve their very, very best. But how do we do that in an environment where the businessman wanted to make profit from this process? We saw many, many mistakes. And I can tell you tragic stories I won't tell today where we too had suffered in this situation. So we decided, play the violins again, that we knew a better way. And that is that we would set up our own company to set up and manage international schools on behalf of owners and developers. And that's where our journey began 7 years ago. And I'm really proud of the fact that we've now set up schools in Mumbai, India. We currently manage 12 schools in China. We have 2 schools in development in the Middle East, and now Kingsgate in Malaysia. We also do teacher training and development in all parts of the world. We just won a big contract to train teachers in 8 schools across Eastern Europe. We've trained many schools across the Asia Pacific area. And this is where we've constantly maintained our focus on the fact that we are educators, not business people. Even though we work in the for-profit space, we want to make sure it's clear that we stay at the cutting edge by delivering at conferences and speaking and training teachers. We've won a number of awards which we're very proud of, related to the work that we've done, particularly in the last couple of years, in terms of global branding, in terms of our community service, because we're very passionate about working in humanitarian projects and giving back to the communities we work with. And that's been a fun and interesting aspect of our business. Here's a list of what we basically do. So what happens is that a businessman comes to us and says, we want to set up an international school. My analogy as to why we do what we do is that I love food. I don't know about you, but I love restaurants. I love eating beautiful food. But you know, that doesn't mean I should own a restaurant. And this is what we say to business owners. The first big project, which I can tell crazy stories about, the owner of the school in China used to own a chain of jewelry stores. And he was trying to manage schools. And it was the same analogy. He was really good at managing jewelry stores. But he had no idea about education. So we believe our model basically helps us focus on what we're good at, and that is the core business of education. I want you to think about what education...
Sorry, are you opening some questions or you want to finish your presentation and then I can...
Yeah, I'll just... Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah. That'd be great if we could just do it at the end. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about my beliefs about education. So someone gave me the microphone, so I apologise in advance. You need to listen to The World According to Greg for 45 minutes or so. But in terms of education, I don't know about you, but this is what education was like for me when I was a child, and maybe our grandparents. You sort of start in the kindergarten years and you move through a series of boxes and eventually you reach 12th grade. And all classrooms look the same, don't they? They're rows of desks and chairs, and we sit in them, and basically the teacher directs us with information. Now the interesting thing about education has always been that a teacher tells you information they know, you listen and you memorise it, and then later you prove that you've remembered it. And that's how you get an A. And to be honest, that's quite ridiculous. I'm not going to tell you my grades in grade 12. Because they're irrelevant to me. I'm 47 years of age. I know you're surprised. But I'm 47 years of age, and my grades in grade 12 don't matter anymore. What I did with my education is far more important. So we talk about the innovation generation. One of the things that we're passionate about is, let me use the analogy of Da Vinci. Da Vinci was a famous artist or scientist, depends on what your perspective is. But what's interesting about the man is that he brought together science and technology and the arts. He recognised that you needed to be smart, intelligent, but you needed to be also creative and scientific as well. Many people say to me, oh, how do you cope living in a foreign country? Shanna is from the US, I'm from Australia, we live in China, spend a lot of time in the Middle East. Do you miss your family? And yes, I do. But you know what? My family moved from their hometown to their current place of residence back in 1968. They travelled 26 hours in a car to get there, from the southern part of Australia to the northern part. Do you know what? I can be in my home, I can see my parents in 12 hours. When my parents were back 40 years ago, my parents had to travel 26 hours in a car. You are aware, aren't you, that they're very, very close now in Dubai, they're trialling drones providing unmanned transport. Are you kidding me? So imagine grab taxi without a person. And the helicopter or whatever this drone thing is turns up and you jump on it and you go from the Burj Dubai to the marina. Can you imagine that? My grandmother died last year at the age of 95. And I spent hours telling her about this amazing object that I held in my hand that I wouldn't let go of 24 hours a day. That was a computer and it was a camera and it was a device where I could talk to my family. I spoke to my children last night, live time on a video on my phone. So think about how the world has changed for you in the last 30 years. And now think about what the world's going to be like in 30 years' time. The challenge for us as educators is we're trying to prepare children for a world that hasn't even been invented yet. Surprise, surprise, I'm an educator and I don't know what the world's going to look like in 30 years' time, so I don't know how we best prepare these children. I don't know how to design a physics textbook for 30 years' time because I don't know what information is going to be relevant. Nobody does. So we have to prepare children different to adapt to that different environment that's gradually changing. So how do you plan for the future as a parent? Because some of these ideas are scary. You're concerned too. What school do I send my child to? What occupation do I guide them on? If you listen to Bill Gates, he has some great ideas right now. The current ideas from Bill Gates is that people should get into biomedicine and a whole lot of technology trends. Who knows that it's going to be the same in 30 years' time. So how do you as a parent manage your child's career in the future as well? How do you make these important decisions? The biggest question of all to say to your child is, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's an easy question. It might surprise you that being a teacher and a principal was not what I said when I was 13. I wanted to be a professional footballer, I think, and then I wanted to be a professional golfer, and then I wanted to be a professional footballer, and then I wanted to be an architect, then I wanted to be an engineer, then I wanted to be an architect, then a draftsman, then I wanted to be a teacher, then I didn't want to be a teacher because everybody's a teacher and that's not exciting, and now I design schools. I designed schools at 47 years of age. Who would have thought that changed? Guess what? What I learned in year 12 doesn't help me design schools. I have no design background at all. So I had to adapt. So the first thing I challenge you to think about is the most important question is not the first question, it's the second question. And the second question is, what is it about that interests you? One of my mentors and supervisors many years ago said to me, Greg, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? And my response was, I want to be the principal of the largest and best school in Australia. She said, okay, what is it about that interests you? And I went, oh, that's cool. She said, no, what is it about that job and that role that interests you? And she made me think about it. A week later, my answer was, I want to influence large groups of people. I want to be in charge of large groups of people and persuade and influence them to behave in certain ways. That started at the level of teacher through to kids. I was a good teacher. I wanted to help other teachers become better teachers. And now I want to help other principals become better principals and make schools better schools. Can you see the difference? So my challenge to you is not the first question. Ask the first question, but move on to the second question. Ask your child what it is about that career they're interested in. And that's when you'll hit the hot spot of understanding where your child should be. The other thing I want you to understand about modern day education is that traditional education tends to focus on the bottom, and this is what we call Bloom's taxonomy. We train teachers. One of the key things we do is train teachers. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a teacher training session for a minute. Traditional education tends to focus on taking notes, reading and comprehending. As I said before, feeding information to children, and then later they prove to you that they've memorised it and understood it. But modern education shouldn't focus on that alone. You need to spend more time up the top, creating, designing and forecasting. We've lived in China for the last 7 years, and what I say to Chinese parents is, you should hope that your children don't make computers, they should design computers. And there's a difference. How do we do this? If I want to increase the strength of this muscle, I need to exercise it in a particular way, correct? It doesn't happen by accident. So you know how you get really good at memorization? Spend a lot of time doing this. We had a student in Qingdao who was the world's memorization champion. He was incredible at this. He could walk into this room, ask everybody's name, and tell you, and repeat it back in a moment. So what? So what? Can anyone remember the periodic table that you memorised in grade 10? I can't. But you know what I can do? I can now create, I can design, I can forecast, I can draw conclusions, I can analyse, I can pull things apart, I can take information, I can apply it in different contexts. When something went wrong in the workplace yesterday, I could solve it. Traditional education doesn't prepare children for that. They come across a problem, stop. I haven't memorised the solution to that problem, so therefore I don't know how to move. I'm exaggerating a little bit on purpose, but can you see the point? You need to prepare children for this kind of education. Needs to not just read, hear and see, but children learn far more effectively if they see, hear, read, experience and teach others. So when people talk to you about modern education, this is what it should focus on. What is a classroom? Is it this special space that you walk into at 9 o'clock and you leave at 3 o'clock? I was having dinner last night and Shannon and I were discussing a particular topic, I forget what it was, and I didn't know the answer to her question, so I picked up my phone and I found the answer. Isn't that a classroom? Your children are in a classroom in your car when you're driving from point A to point B, and they're asking you questions and they're observing and they're thinking. Teachers now recognise that a classroom is not just from 10 o'clock till 11 o'clock when they're in that space. We want children to become lifelong learners and to have an appetite for learning that reaches far outside that space of 9 till 10. There's been this introduction today of this concept of the flipped classroom. It's controversial, there are pros and cons to it, but just to explain it, what we used to do is we would say to children, okay, the teacher would stand at the front of the room and I would teach you facts about science. And again, later you would prove whether you remember it or not. One of the challenges we've often faced in subjects like physics, when we train physics teachers, is the physics teachers will say, hey, these ideas of applying knowledge are really great, but I've got to get through this content. I've got this PowerPoint that's 50 pages long and kids have to know this information. And we say to them, print it out. What are you getting children to write down notes for? All that's teaching children is how to write without getting a sore hand. Print it out. Put the information on the web. Give them the content in advance. So what a flipped classroom does is it gives the content to the children in advance on the web, online or in some other way, and then when they get into the classroom, that's when they apply it, analyse it and unpack it. The other recent trends in education that you should understand and know about is the concept of growth mindset, made famous by a lady named Carol Dweck. A lot of what I'm talking about today sort of relates to it. The fixed mindset is this concept of failure is the limit of my abilities. I'm either good at it or I'm not. I don't like to be challenged, I can either do it or I can't. My potential is predetermined, when I'm frustrated I give up. It's this concept of having limitations. And we socialise into believing this, aren't we? So one of the things that's interesting about living in China is just Australia 100 years ago, or 50 years ago. The education system in Australia 50 years ago said that I'm going to be a tradesperson or a vocationally trained person, or I'm going to be an academically trained person. No longer. We talk now about the convergence of both vocational and academic training. It comes together. You're neither this nor that, you can be both. So think about how you can develop this in your children. How do you develop this growth mindset as a parent? You tell them that there is a way to do it. You can do anything that you want to do, as long as you have the skills and the extra time to do it. I don't like IKEA furniture. Do you know why? I mean, my parents are going to visit us probably in a month's time and they're going to see the IKEA furniture in their house and they're going, hey, that's great, you put this IKEA furniture together. Do you know what? It took me 3 times as long as anybody else to do it. But you know, because I had a growth mindset, I didn't give up. I kept working at it. I knew it was possible. I just wasn't good at it. And I made mistakes. I put it together wrong and I pulled it apart because I don't follow the instructions. So growth mindset basically is based on this idea of challenging children to grow, making children open to new things, keeping their mind open to new ideas. Some of you are stressed that your child at the age of 15 or 16 doesn't know what they want to do when they finish school. It's okay. Because they're going to change their job 10 times in the next 20 years. It's okay. But maybe you need to help them understand what they're good at and not so good at and where to spend their time and energy. This is an important thing to understand. Technology is another controversial issue in technology in terms of education today that I want to mention. when we manage schools, sometimes we'll go into a school and we'll evaluate the performance of the school and give feedback to the administration about how to get it right. And one of our key questions about technology is, does it accelerate student achievement? Because if it doesn't, it shouldn't be used. So I'm a big fan of technology. I have it everywhere. I've got an iPad, iPhone, I've got the watch, I've got everything. But in a classroom, it shouldn't be used unless it accelerates learning. As this cartoon says, I appreciate the text, Kate, but next time just raise your hand. So we walk into classrooms and we see a teacher using PowerPoint and we say, that's really, really great, but why didn't you just print it out? Oh. There's amazing things you can do with technology, but make sure that you're using technology to accelerate learning. And this is the advice that we give teachers and schools about this area. Another topic I want to mention to you, because it's a current education trend that you need to understand, is the current focus on play-based learning. Play-based learning is best practice in early childhood. I'm going to start with that statement now. It is. If your school is not doing play-based learning in the early years, it's not doing the best job it can. However, play-based learning needs to be taught by teachers that are qualified to do play-based learning. It's not about throwing boxes in the middle of a room and saying, hey guys, make a fire engine. That's not play-based learning. I was very fortunate to, when we did the Mumbai project, our job was to, so Bill Gates, you've heard of him, he sent his children to a very famous school in Seattle. And I was at that school for 3 months, learning about why it was such a great school, and our job was to copy the concepts from that school and set up the new school in Mumbai, India. And it was amazing because what happened is they had a very, very clear curriculum about benchmarks and standards. They knew, those kids were smart, and they got through the content like nobody's business. But you know what happened? It's a Tuesday, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday, middle of the week, and I'm not sure if you know about Seattle, it's a freezing cold place. And that's not good for this Australian. This Australian hates the cold. And it had been raining, and it was cold, and there was this swing set that had filled with water and frozen. And the sun had come out, so these tubes of ice had fallen out of the swing set. And these kids at lunchtime were having this fantastic game with these cylinders of ice. But you know what's sad about very traditional structured learning environments? The bell rings, stop doing that, it's time to go to class, and these kids were going, but we're having fun playing with this ice. And the teacher said, bring it in. And I'm going, seriously? Bring it in. So the kids brought in these cylinders of ice and they played with it. And they talked about, so how long will it take to melt? I don't know. Why don't we make a prediction? What makes it melt faster? If you rub your hand on it, does that make it go faster? Oh yeah, it does. What do you call that? Oh, friction. So when we melt it, how much water will be there as a result of the ice? And will it weigh the same now as ice as it will when it's water? You get the picture? This went on and on and on. And I'm sitting there just salivating as an educator, saying this is the most incredible thing I've seen in my life. Mathematics, science, English, social studies, geography, I mean every subject you can ever imagine, driven by kids. That's what play-based learning is all about. It's not structured, but it's facilitated by a teacher who understands play-based learning. It's done badly by many, many people. So just because a teacher's got a picture on the board that says, I do play-based learning, don't trust it. Because play-based learning is a special skill that's hard to train, but it's incredibly effective. As you know, I manage schools, for-profit schools. And I've been out there today, and you know what, this is honestly truthful. Some people come up to me and they say, wow, your school's really expensive. And some people come up to me and they say, wow, that's really cheap. It's all a matter of perspective, isn't it? I don't drive a Ferrari, unfortunately. Do you know why? Too expensive. Bill Gates, he could drive a Ferrari, cheap. It's all relative. But I want to give you some advice from my side as an education manager about how do you find the value of a school. Let me let you in on another secret. 40 to 60% of the school budget is human resources. In an Australian government school, it's about 80%. And it can be as low as 30%. But as a general rule, this is the case. So the most influential factor on both student achievement and the budget is teacher quality. I'm not going to tell you how much teachers get paid, but the range is from here right over to here somewhere. A school is expensive if it has expensive teachers.
Adding to it, but the critical factor here is the quality of the educators.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of these pretty highlights, I mean, I'm an investment banker.
Sure.
We've done leadership classes at Oxford and Cambridge and so on, and leadership means this, means that. Unless you really understand how to apply these things, then it becomes an exercise leading to nowhere. And I'd rather go back to the old ways of getting them to understand the content.
Exactly.
Now, I'm pulling my daughter out of one of the top schools here, British International School, BISDale, because number one, she's been there for 6 years. Right? So this is, if you want to see the quality of the fruit, you see what you farm at the beginning. Right? And we have been constantly trying to ask some of the teachers that have been there, they come, it's like they're on holiday, they go 1 year in KL, another year in the Philippines, etc. The focus has been on the financial or commercial side of the business. So, you know, for some of us that are well educated, we find some of these schools are literally taking us for a ride. And when I look at your budget and saying 60% of this is actually human resources, the quality of your teaching, you know, the quality of teaching was very poor. If you try and ask the teacher, what are my daughter's strengths or weaknesses, they find difficulty in answering you, in a significant way. Right? And how do you then define whether this school is really number one, value for money? Two, are they winging it and trying to figure it out as they go along? Right? You all these fancy words of what they're trying to apply. And as a person who sets up schools, really, how do you drill in as a parent? Because these years you can't get back. Right? And once the foundation is in and of itself not there, then you have to go back to basics again and rebuild the foundation. So we get these expectational differences where parents and teachers, in my view, should be aligned to a common goal at the end. Yet there's this attitude that we are educators, leave us alone, we know what we're talking about, just be patient, wait. It'll come at some point in the future. And you come to your IGCSEs or your A-levels, and then it's like, well, you know what? This is what your kid is capable of. And you know, not all of us, sure all of us want our kids to be shining stars. But any parent will be honest with you that you can tell that a school should bring out my child's best potential. And if it's not that, then when you get it wrong, after $1 million ringgit later, they come and say, well, that's actually where they are. And you have this disconnect between where you see things and where they've seen things.
No, I totally agree. And I'm going to come to
a serious problem.
No, I totally agree. And I guess the reason I'm sharing this with you is it's not a massive secret, but if you are paying for 100% premium school, then you deserve 100% premium teachers. Now, we run a range of different schools. When a business owner comes to us and he says he wants foreign native English speaking teachers from a particular country, we say, okay, expensive school. If he says, I want the price to be low, we say, well, then drop the quality of your teachers. I mean, it's just a scale of factors.
Just because the teachers are white from the UK, right, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be good. I'm very honest with you.
No, it's exactly right. It's not about...
And this is sometimes, I think, what we're being chipped about.
And maybe, and obviously I can't speak about specific schools, but it's harder for you than it is. What we do is we go in and we observe the teachers, we evaluate the teachers, we have systems to monitor for, just like you do in your industry. You have ways of figuring this out, and it's tough for parents. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do today, is give a little bit of insight into, I'm going to give you some help with some questions you can ask, because we know the questions to ask. we spend time in some of these schools and we know whether they're good or bad by walking into them. We observe the forums, we listen to the voices of the parents, etc. We know what's going on and what's not. And again, you won't hear me say a negative word about any school in this country or others particularly. You know, that's not my role here, but I want to help you arm you with some questions of what to look for.
Please do, because I think you know, in the beginning you said something that was very, very correct. The migration between educators, right, and the business aspect of education. Okay? This is, you know, we consider, I've always grown up, right, with the view that my teacher is someone who I respect a lot because of, you know, their position as an educator. This has a responsibility towards developing me, right, as an inherent aspect. But when you get out of that area, you start coming into a commercial scene. It becomes very, very touchy.
Yeah, and to give you the worst example that we see, and it happens in places like China where there's less, where parents are more often not able to speak English, is that the school is decorated with backpackers, claiming that they're foreign teachers.
Yeah, yeah.
And I better be careful once or twice.
No, I'm a backpacker,
and if that's what you're paying for, that's okay. But if you're paying for something different. So, questions that you need to ask your schools is, what countries do your expat teachers come from? And are they native and non-native? Because there are great teachers from all countries. But let me tell you, some are more expensive than others, and that influences the tuition fees that you're paying. What qualifications do they have? Do they have an online TESOL qualification, which you can get in a heartbeat, or Forge? Or do you have, is the teacher a career educator who did 3 or 4 years studying, postgraduate study to become an educator? And again, different school, different teacher. How often do the teachers receive training? What's your average turnover? And how do you find your teachers? Again, same industry as all of yours. Let me tell you that if in your industry, if your staff are leaving every year, you've got a problem, correct?
That's right.
If your school's teachers are leaving every year, you have exactly the same problem. Don't let them tell you that, oh, well, you know, I just am having trouble finding good teachers. That's true. 2 good teachers are hard to find. But teachers don't leave for money.
That's right.
They leave because they feel unvalued and poorly managed. High teacher turnover, the average tenure of international school teachers in good schools is 3.2 years worldwide. I got this from people I know in the industry, in the recruitment space. Now this is for good schools, okay? Now definition of good I'll have to explain later, but a good school is 3.2 years. What keeps teachers feeling valued and professionally rewarded? So what's the average tenure of your teachers? You need to ask your schools how long have the teachers been there. When teachers exit the school, do they complete an exit survey? What do they say? If they have proper accreditation, they are required to do exit surveys.
Can we get access to teachers' exit surveys?
That's up to the school. I mean, there's no law that gives you access, but I guess I'm saying this is the kind of question you can ask. If they're fully accredited, it's often a requirement of accreditation to have such systems in place for quality. Because you need to understand that if, again, it's like the restaurant. I love restaurants, but I'm not going to own a restaurant because I don't know how to manage one. If the owner of the school is not an educator, doesn't have education background, they shouldn't be in control of all of the decisions of the school independently. Now, there are some principals who you are angry with and upset with, who don't have control. There are some principals who are answering questions the best way they can, but they don't have control. So I'm going to defend principals a little bit for a minute. That principals at their heart are interesting, difficult, challenging, complex, amazing people, all of that. But they want to have enough control over their own agenda to achieve their outcomes. They don't do it for money. Educators don't do it for money. They're passionate people. And sometimes they're doing the best job they can with the limited power that they have available to them. A businessman will make money from a school if the school is successful. High student achievement, happy families, happy parents, students going on to change the world and do amazing things. Guess what educators want? High academic achievement, kids happy, parents happy, everyone going on to do great things in the world. Same agenda, but it's got to be aligned. So the key issue is, for a school to be successful and for profit, the vision needs to be aligned. The principal and academic management team needs to be on the same page as the owners of the school. It has to be a 10-year financial plan. It needs to be strategic. It needs to be planned out. So the vision needs to be the same. Question to ask. Ask the principal. Explain how major decisions are made at the school. Ask them. That recent decision I heard about, how was that decision made? Did the owner of the school make it? Did you make it? Or did you make it together, collaboratively, in a sensible, intelligent, informed way? Does the principal have a budget that they have control over? Some principals have no control over any budget at all. How do you evaluate the principal's performance? Now, if I own that restaurant that I'm dreaming of owning but won't allow myself to do, how do I evaluate the restaurant? If I don't know anything about restaurant management, you know how I evaluate it? Profit. Do you know how we evaluate schools? We walk into classrooms for 5 minutes at a time. We talk to teachers, we talk to parents, we talk to kids, we open their books. It's a totally different process. So how do they evaluate principals? We know of schools where they evaluate teachers by getting the students in the classroom to do a survey. Seriously. Some of my best teachers would have had a terrible survey from me because they were tough. And they didn't let me get away with anything. I've seen teachers fired because the survey was bad from the kids.
The other question I have is I mean, there are some schools in the United Kingdom where you have parents from various professions on the board. And the interests of the students and parents is reflected at the board level. There are schools, and we include particular schools, there is no representation of parents having to say at the board level or otherwise. And usually when there's a large investment or capital outlay in some of the schools where it looks all razzle-dazzling and everything else, there's a commercial need to actually recoup this as quickly as possible. And hence, that's where the margins are expanded, because in the end, the quality of the teachers is you get dropped. And the capacity for parents to be engaged is considered to be unprofitable.
Yeah,
this is where you start getting into the real issues.
Yeah, for sure. And parents need to have a say. Whether it's a for-profit school or non-profit school, parents need to have a say. You don't own the school, so you shouldn't tell them everything about how to run the school. You need to have a say and feel like you're being heard. And the classic for me is that if a principal wants to spend 1,000 ringgit on education resources, what processes do they need to follow? Now, principals shouldn't have carte blanche to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on their own, but ask them what processes they need to follow to purchase simple amounts of money on basic education resources. Principal turnover. The average tenure of a principal at a good school is 4 to 5 years. Now, you might wish it was longer, but let me be honest with you. As an expat living in a foreign country, you're not going to be there forever. That's the truth. Your expat teachers and your expat principals are going to move on to other places. It's not their home country. But 4 to 5 years for a good school is fair for a principal. So if you've got a higher turnover than that, you might have some problems. What keeps principals feeling valued and professionally rewarded? They don't do it for money. Principals are the same as teachers. Their salary can be from here to there, but they're passionate people that have this incredible vision and spirit for what they do. They don't do it just for the money. They leave because they don't have enough control, they don't feel valued and appreciated. So what's the average tenure of your principal? And ask them, why did the last principal leave? So what does good educational leadership look like? First of all, it needs to be accessible and open door. You should be able to get to the principal within a reasonable time frame, make an appointment, advance warning, but you should be able to get to the principal or the management. Some schools you can't get to the principal. Not reasonable. They should be authentic and transparent, open and trustworthy. They don't have an open budget. If they can be honest with you about the fact that they've got some restrictions and honest things, that's okay. Don't excuse it away, but they should be open and trustworthy. They should be the instructional leader of the school as well. They need to speak teaching, not management. If you haven't been a teacher, you've got no business being a principal. I'm sorry. No business being anywhere near principalship if you haven't been a good teacher. How can you coach teachers to be better teachers if you haven't been a good teacher yourself? Shouldn't be anywhere near it. There should be a former teacher with extensive experience. They're responsible for the highest quality education that school can achieve. How do you do that unless you've been that person and you know the challenges that the teachers are facing? The teachers won't respect them. The teachers don't respect management who don't have an education background. When I recruit teachers, they say, can you tell me about the principal? The next question is, can you tell me about the owners? How involved are the owners in managing the school? That's what good teachers ask. Next thing is about student performance. I want to talk about something I'm very, very passionate about. That you should use, and I think this is an important way to evaluate a school. As a teacher and a principal, I always know who the high performers are in my classrooms. Those A kids, we all know who they are, don't they? Don't we? They're the ones skipping down the hallway, those favourite students everyone knows about. They're winning the awards, they're taking the certificates home every day. You know who they are. And you know who we also know? We know about the poor performers as well, because they're the troublemakers, aren't they? They're the ones that are having difficulties and they're getting D's and they're not getting their homework done and they're in trouble and they're the bane of teachers' lives. We know about them too. But what about the kids in the middle? No child should be anonymous. No child. I'm a father of two. Whether my child is an A, B, C, D or E, my child is important. And I don't care if my child's a mechanic or a doctor or a lawyer or brain surgeon. I want them to achieve their best and be happy. So whether my kid's a C, a B or an A, I want that teacher to know my child, I want that teacher to care about them. So from a systems point of view, you need to know how is the school tracking performance of individual kids? How do you monitor individual progress? That's what we do. We have systems in place to monitor individual progress. 10 kids got an A, I don't care. I don't. Well, I care, it's good. The owner's happy. But good kids do well in spite of the teacher sometimes. Some of the brightest kids don't need a good teacher, they learn it anyway. And some of those bottom kids are struggling all their lives. Good teachers can bring them up. But what about the kids in the middle? Those anonymous kids that's a C. That C should be a B. And you ask them, how do they respond to negative data? So again, if my children are only getting C's or B's in my subject, then how do I respond to that? I teach them differently. I figure out what went wrong and I adjust my teaching strategies and behaviours to fix the problem. That's how things work. And again, as educators, this is our big focus. Another thing I want to ask you to think about is the school vision. Is it lip service or is it really life service? Every school in this hall has a vision or a mission statement. How do you figure out though if it's real or it's just some kind of marketing ploy? It's something you need to think about. Because some of you are choosing the school based on a vision in a particular way. So one of the things that we talk about in our company when we evaluate schools, we talk about what we call GSE signature experiences. Think about is what experiences reflect your unique vision and priorities. So when we talk to a school about improving its performance, we say, talk to us about your unique experiences, your signature things that make you unique and special. Where's the evidence of this unique vision and process? Tell me about it. But more importantly, I shouldn't even hear about it because when I walk down the classroom in the hallway, I should sort of see it and feel it within minutes. Become obsessed with the student experience and walk in the shoes of students to empathise in an authentic and meaningful way. So a school might say, we care about relationships. Okay. Why are the teachers leaving every year? How come your teacher turnover is so high? How come I can't get to the principal? How come when the principal can only meet me for 5 minutes and he says, I don't have any time to talk now? I need to speed through this, but you get my point. You need to look for the signature experiences that actually reflect the vision the school's proposing to have. Technology I've already talked a little bit about. But again, ask the school, how will technology be used in the classroom? How will it increase student achievement? I'm fine to use iPads and laptops and whiteboards and all that sort of stuff, but tell me, how will your teachers improve my child's grades by using that instead of a pen and pencil? I want our schools to use technology, but only if it increases student achievement. To protect access to inappropriate material. I was concerned about the articles I read recently about the Malaysian government releasing access to technology in the classrooms. You know why I was concerned? If they don't back it up with training so teachers know how to teach in a different way, what will happen is it just will be this carte blanche idea and children are going to learn less, not more. What training do you provide your teachers? Stop, we don't want them. They said, what? We said, we don't want them. I said, you're crazy. We want them next year. And we want to put a training plan in place so that by the time the teachers get them, they know how to use them and apply them in the classroom. Otherwise, they'll be dusty on the wall, the teachers don't know how to use them. Wasted money. Extracurricular activities. Ask the school how do they choose and screen their extracurricular activities. Every school we set up, parents are really, it's funny, I'm really surprised about this, but parents say to us, hey, can you tell me about the extracurricular activities you're going to run? And my response is, anything you want. I've got hundreds of emails right now in my inbox. I arrived in Malaysia, somebody told somebody that I was setting up a school, and they're all emailing me, and they're in the hallway today, say, hey, can we run Mickey Mouse programs, Disneyland programs, this program, that program? It's not hard to deliver. Well, how does a school decide which ones to run? It should be purposeful. It shouldn't just be about, I mean, I'm all about fun. Do fun stuff, absolutely, have fun, recreation. But what about the balance? You know, if my son or daughter is really good at dancing but really, really bad at swimming, then make them do swimming as well as the dancing, enjoy stuff. Does a school receive commission from the ECAs? Did they choose that ECA because they get a commission or because they think it's good for kids? What's the purpose of it? What does good teaching look like? It looks like an individualised curriculum that meets the needs of all kids in the classroom. I've already talked before about the fact that no child should remain anonymous. And the curriculum needs to meet the needs of individuals. Teachers need to be thoroughly planned. I interviewed a teacher the day before yesterday, and I said to them, talk to me about how you do planning. And they said, oh, well, it depends on what page I'm up to in the textbook. I said, thanks very much. End of conversation. Planning is not following a textbook. Planning is, hey, I've got 5 kids that are really good at this, but I've got 5 kids that are really bad at that. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to let these kids do this type of activity, but these kids over here are going to get this extra assistance. And I'm going to adjust the way I describe that material and give them some hands-on activities over here. And those kids at the back, they're really independent learners, so I'm going to give them that extra tough stuff so they can go and pursue it. That's what individualised curriculum looks like. You don't deliver the same thing to all kids the same way. Quality assessment. It needs to be qualitative. Again, I've been in China for 7 years and we do a lot of work in the Asia Pacific areas, and people in these areas love testing. Why? Because it makes them feel good. It makes them, you know, they get feedback. So it makes them feel good, but it's important that they get feedback. But what people assume is that you get good feedback from a traditional test. So some schools test every week, or almost every day, in this crazy, overbearing way, because they believe this gives good feedback. But my concern about too much testing, and I believe in testing because you've got to monitor progress, but too much testing steals learning. Stop learning today, guys, because we're going to have a test. Okay? Put your pens down, come over here. This is test taking time. So we're going to stop learning about photosynthesis and biology and the earth and the sun and all the rest of it because I've got to test you. Spend the hour on learning. It should evaluate distance travelled. It shouldn't just be about, okay, you know, we've got to achieve this goal. You need to be able to monitor distance travelled. So, for example, we believe in using portfolios for young children. So a children does handwriting, okay? They write their very, very best writing at the age of 5, and it's a mess. Then it doesn't make sense. But you ask the child, what does this mean? And through this chicken school, they say the cat sat on the mat. You go, great. So you were trying to say the cat sat on the mat. Okay. So you grab that piece of paper and you put it in a folder. Then 6 weeks later, you say, hey, can you write that sentence about the cat again? So they write this sentence about the cat, and you go, great. You pick that piece of paper up and you put it beside the other one. Test. I just tested that kid. I didn't need to stop teaching for an hour to do an English exam. I captured the material from week 1, I captured the material from week 6, and I compared it, and I know distance travelled. And the parent comes in and says, hey, look how your child's progressed. Or I could give them a B.
There you go.
What's a B mean? B for what? Accreditation. I just want to mention that some of your schools have accreditation. I want you to understand what accreditation means. What is it and why is it important? What it does, it documents best practice management. So we got approached from a school in China just a few weeks ago that has failed accreditation twice. International, they run as a school fine, but they went for this international accreditation, they failed twice, 2 years in a row. I know why they failed without even going into their school. Do you know how you fail accreditation? Bad management. Accreditation is documenting best practice management. If they have high teacher turnover, they don't or they shouldn't have accreditation. If they don't have decision-making processes in the school that make good decisions collaboratively, they shouldn't or don't have good accreditation. So you need to be careful about accreditation. Is it real or is it just branding? Because there's a lot of fake accreditation out there. And I'm not going to get into it today, but you need to make sure the accreditation is real. There are about 5 or 6 bodies that are really good, high-quality bodies that are tough and they're real. But there's a lot of fake accreditations. And you need to, the website that's got these fancy badges down the bottom in the right-hand corner, so what? You need to check the accreditation is actually real. Ask to see the, if it's a good accreditation system, they'll get a report of things they need to fix. If the school doesn't show you that accreditation report, you should have concerns. Because part of the accreditation process is to be open with your community about what you're good at and what you're not so good at. And being afraid to tell people what you're not good at is a red flag. Because we're not perfect. Well, I am most of the time. Okay, I'll quickly run through this last part because you're going to think I'll be in trouble for speaking to that. No, there might be some questions. But I guess, yes, in Malaysia, we are setting up an international school. But to be honest, we care about kids, and we manage schools in other parts of the world as well. And we're open to helping people make good decisions. You will find, if you get to know me, that I have a high level of integrity, I believe. So it's not about saying, hey, this school's good or bad, it's helping you make good decisions. I'm a parent, I'm a friend, I'm a colleague, I'm an educator. That's what I base my decisions on. So feel free to email me for further questions, but if you've got time for questions, please feel free to ask. And if they're hard ones, I'm going to give them to Sharon.